Welcome, everybody, to Kneecast 2022. Great to have you back with us, and thank you for joining. Right off the bat, I want to give a big thanks to Elizabeth Newbold, who keeps all of this pulled together and organized for us all year round, but especially at the time of the annual meeting. Thank you, Elizabeth, for all you do and for keeping us together. I also want to thank the good folks at Perform Media who are doing all the AV and meeting logistics today, the technical side of things, and keeping us connected virtually. I also want to quickly thank the panelists, moderators, and facilitators who will be helping us keep the meeting going today and tomorrow in a variety of ways. We'll introduce folks as we go for that, but thank you, everybody, for being part of this. And lastly, in terms of thanks, I just wanted to thank our federal partners, the FDA and USDA, without whom we wouldn't be able to do this work. And certainly appreciate the support through the USDA NEFA FSOP award that keeps NECAFs funded and running. With that, wanted to start by warming up the chat function in the meeting platform. So hopefully you all can find that. And I would love to hear what people's favorite virtual meeting hobby or fidget might be. What do you do when you're in a virtual meeting? We all know we do this stuff, and I'm wondering what people do to sort of stay engaged, even when you're feeling that you can't. So go ahead and share those in the chat. Meanwhile, I think what we ought to do is roll right into the plenary session. And to do that, I'm going to ask Matt to roll the video. Welcome again, everybody, to the 2022 NECAFS annual meeting. We thought we'd start by just providing a bit of background on NECAFS, what we are, where we came from, and what we're going to get into this year. First, I just want to review what our mission is as a regional center. We're here to enhance produce safety and preventive controls, training, education, and outreach among small and medium-sized farms and small processors in the Northeast region. Who are we? Well, as you all know, we're a collection of lots of different folks, including university researchers, educators, and extension specialists, state regulatory and enforcement agency partners, local food and farming organizations, non-for-profit organizations, consultants, industry associations. We've even got small, medium-sized producers, small processors, and buyers among us. Other regional centers and initiatives, National Center, and the USDA FDA partners also participate in our activities. And we're grateful to have everybody here today. We just talked about our goal. And what we've done over the years is break that goal down into more manageable objectives. There are 5 of them listed at the bottom of the screen here. We started out by establishing a foundational network structure, and we continue that work today and revisiting that at times, even in these annual meetings, to rethink how we can do our work better. We then built capacity, competency, and collaboration through a collaborative framework, which continues to this day. We've developed and delivered educational programs through partnerships and collaborations across the region and often across the nation. We constantly evaluate and assess our progress and the impact we've had in the region through the collaborative work we've done together. Lastly, we want to make sure we can sustain the good work we do, and that involves always looking at where there are opportunities to do that new work and how we might fund it. We're currently supported by the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture Food Safety Outreach Program. We're grateful to our federal sponsors for that support. For those who might be interested in the history of NECAFS, I wanted to just remind everybody, we started way back when, in January of 2015, as just a small group thinking about how we might approach food safety and post-harvest handling in particular throughout the region. Our observations at that time were that there was disparate opinion, there was a wide range of accuracy and location of knowledge that we felt growers and processors could use. Oftentimes, there was overlapping and non-coordinated effort within the region. Lots of the work was based on field experiences shared by peers, but not shared with everybody necessarily. And what we wanted to do was push toward a more coordinated regional effort that really extended the research base more into the practice in the field. So this was a small planning grant that was started out in early 2015. It did lead to very good timing, or it was supported by very good timing when the FDA and USDA jointly started to establish the regional center model. So NECAFS is one of 4 regional centers supported jointly by the USDA and FDA, tasked with enhancing education and outreach related to the Food Safety Modernization Act, with 2 specific audiences in mind. One, small processors, which mainly were being supported by preventive controls for human foods work, and small, medium-sized producers, mainly being supported by the produce safety rule work and the Produce Safety Alliance trainings. So NECAFS remains one of these 4 regional centers. We're delighted to work in partnership with the other regional centers in the South, in the West, and in the North Central regions. We're also supported by a lead regional center, which is hosted by the regional center in the Southern Center at the University of Florida. There are also 2 cooperative agreement projects, the Local Foods Cooperative Agreement and the Tribal Agricultural Cooperative Agreement, which we continue to coordinate with. So that's a little bit of background on where we came from and what we're here to do. In the next part of the presentation, Elizabeth will introduce the Kneecast team and talk a little bit about what we're planning to accomplish over the next 2 days.
Thank you so much, Chris. I would like to introduce the Kneecast team. Chris Callahan is the director. I am Elizabeth Newbold. I'm the assistant director. Annie Fitzgerald is our research specialist focusing on preventive controls. And Sean Fogarty is a research specialist focusing on hydroponic and aquaponic resources and the produce safety rule. I'll quickly go through a summary of our activities since our last annual meeting in 2021. And then Sean and Annie will take an opportunity to spend additional time talking about specific activities that they have been working on over the last 12 months. On that first slide, you remember that Chris introduced the 5 objectives of NECAFS, and one of them was to build our collaborative framework. And this was an intentional process where we brought together our regional network in order to identify and discuss specific issues relevant to our regional processors and producers. And as a result of that sharing of information, issue identification, and discussion on how best to address those issues, NECAFS now has taken on specific activities to develop educational material to directly impact those early objectives identified by our collaborative framework. And so I'm going to just quickly run through a list of activities that NECAFS has undertaken over the last 12 to 24 months relevant to preventive controls. And you'll see here we have listed Roadmap to Resources, which Annie will dig into, Regional Preventive Controls Needs Assessment, and Regional Processing Data Snapshot. When it comes to produce safety, we created a national water lab map, which is updated and maintained on a regular basis, a buyer handbook, which will be coming sometime in this year, summarizing and extending existing produce safety research. And this will be the focus of the produce safety workgroup meeting tomorrow morning. Produce Safety Research Consortium, which Sean will dig into in a later presentation, resources for hydroponic and aquaponic growers. And again, Sean will explore that a little bit further. Systematic Produce Safety Needs Assessment, and this is currently under review for publication in a peer-reviewed journal. Decision Support Tool, which again, more will be coming in this year. And the Produce Safety Alliance pre- and post-test evaluation. We also have several activities that are cross-cutting, touching both preventive controls and produce safety. There's the Extension Legal Services Initiative project that we did with the Center for Ag and Food Systems at Vermont Law School, and that project is complete, and all of those resources can be found on that project output webpage, lc.necafs.org. There's, of course, the Food Safety Resource Clearinghouse, which you're all familiar with, and it's a curated source of produce safety and preventive control related resources. We have a collaborative framework literature review, and this is also under review in a peer-reviewed journal right now. And this explores the essential criteria needed to create a collaborative framework and things that we can do as a network to continually improve our work as a collaborative regional center. And finally, Google Analytics data visualization of the usage metrics from the Food Safety Resource Clearinghouse. And this is an effort led by Annie to better use the actual usage information of the clearinghouse to understand how people interact with and what resources are meaningful to users of the clearinghouse. I mentioned that we're doing the Produce Safety Alliance pre and post-test evaluations, and I wanted to show this to you because we now have 3 years of regional data, 2019, 2020, and 2021. And this is particularly interesting to see trends over time. You can see the blue arrow pointing to the class summary information for the 3 years. And you can see that the pre-test knowledge has increased, the post-test knowledge has increased, and that change, the delta from the pre to the post, has narrowed. And there's a lot of information here that you probably can't consume all in this 30 seconds of the slide. So this summary table is provided in the resources tab on the conference platform. I will now turn it over to Sean so that he can talk about his work with the hydroponic and aquaponic resource development. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm Sean Fogarty. You may remember me from last January when I was a new employee at Kneecast part-time. Since then, I've come on full-time as a research specialist. And one of the first projects that I've been working on is educational resources for hydroponic and aquaponic growers. So we're seeing an increase in the prevalence of these types of operations across the country, along with a lack of dedicated educational resources for audiences, including growers, educators, and regulators. So we have a lack of a shared understanding among growers about produce safety, and then among regulators, educators, and other stakeholders about the diversity of system designs and operational principles in the systems, and then how those things relate to produce safety risk assessment and FSMA compliance. So we have our approach here. First, we organized and facilitated meetings with an advisory board of folks with experience and expertise in produce safety and in these system types. So that led to an educational resource need determination and the project scope. My former coworker, Johanna Dorn, and I conducted several informal grower interviews from which we gleaned on-farm experiences around produce safety and also the preferred educational delivery modes and approaches among growers. Where we're at right now is the purple steps 3 through 5. So we have mostly completed a review of existing resources and literature, but as you all know, that is a never-ending task. Number 4, we are drafting or have completed most of the fact sheet content. And number 5, which is the most exciting part for me so far, is actually getting to see these fact sheets mocked up and graphic designed. So we have 2 of those designs complete at this point. Next, we'll be submitting those fact sheets to our advisory group and a few growers in a focus group to get some feedback, make any revisions we need to. And then once we have that content solidified, it'll be a fairly light lift to work on some web and video content development based on that information. So the outcomes of this will be that we'll have print, web, and video educational resources for a broad audience, including growers, regulators, educators, and other stakeholders like industry groups. The resources will be disseminated through the Kneecast Clearinghouse, through those industry groups, and also through the other regional center networks to improve produce safety knowledge among growers and the knowledge about these operations among others, ultimately leading to increased practice adoption, better FSMA enforcement and compliance, and reduced risk. So just to give you a little taste of what we've got going on, these are the first two mock-ups, the first page of each one. We have 8 total fact sheet topics, including the first, Hydroponics and Aquaponics 101, where we'll orient general audiences to what the systems look like, how they work, and what the primary produce safety considerations might be. And then we break out those subjects into single topic fact sheets that are more targeted toward growers and can be used for worker training. And the final page of each fact sheet lists further resources to help growers with implementation of best practices and FSMA requirements. And our first release of materials will be expected this summer. So look forward to that. Now I'm going to switch gears and talk about the Northeast Produce Safety Research Consortium, which I have to slow down when I say because it's a mouthful. So as Chris alluded to earlier, in the Northeast, we have a wide variety of operations in terms of what's grown, how they do it, what size they are, and what their market is. And due to this diversity, I'm not going to read this whole sentence because it's a lot of words, but also in the FSMA implementation, on the compliance side, each state is organizing its own programming and its own inspection requirements. So this is leading to a patchwork of requirements, of knowledge, and we don't really have a cohesive picture of what's going on in the Northeast. There are unique aspects of these growing systems, which we'd like to investigate using some quantitative methods to improve the knowledge about produce safety related pathogens, and more importantly, practices that might reduce the risk of those pathogens making their way through produce to people. So our approach here, we are in the first 3 months. So the purple section is very small here because so far we're working on a framework for ongoing region-wide on-farm sampling and analysis. So that's a lot of hyphenated words because there's a lot to that sentence. We're gonna, over the next 4 years, be sampling on farms throughout the 12 states and of the region, coordinating with the 12 state universities and labs in Maine and Delaware and Maryland. And we'll also be coordinating with FDA labs for further analysis of those samples. So that's where we're at right now. And once we're further down the line, we'll be providing a framework for identified data gap research for 2 offices at FDA, the OAO and the OFS. And third, this is what we do at Kneecast. We provide frameworks. So we're providing a unique framework to evaluate specific FSMA-related guidance and implementation that might come out of the information that is gained through these on-farm sampling program and the data analysis. So from all of that, we're hoping, or we know that samples and interview data will be collected across various cropping systems that are relevant and common in the Northeast region. And those samples will be analyzed by the regional university labs and the FDA, leading to an understanding of human pathogen prevalence and survivability on farms in the Northeast. So from that, producers will gain increased knowledge about the human pathogen prevalence and survivability across those systems, and hopefully adopt practices as informed by those research activities. And producers will demonstrate improved fundamental understanding and be able to prioritize the adoption of practices when seeking to comply with the FSMA PSR. So with that, I will turn it over to Annie Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie Fitzgerald. I've been a research specialist here at Kneecast since fall of 2020, and I'll be talking about the Preventive Controls for Human Foods website, where we are curating food safety resources for small and very small processors. In 2019, the Preventive Controls for Human Food Working Group of Kneecast identified the need for a comprehensive resource where small and very small processors could learn more information about the PCHF rule. The group recognized that there are many resources already available from state authorities, the other regional centers, extension programs, food specialty groups, and of course the FDA. But the fact that processors needed to go to these many sources, decide which of their Google results were reliable, customize this very technical information to their businesses, and compile it all was very daunting. And processors were having a lot of trouble putting all of this together. For educators, oftentimes supporting a processor meant relying on whatever information or resources they could remember off the top of their head, or being limited by area of specialty and having to point processors to several other authorities on the topic to get them information. The Preventive Controls for Human Food Working Group didn't want to create a completely new resource of very redundant information, but instead pull together the very good work being done by their peers and create a centralized repository of this information that would be very accessible to processors, and create a new tool for processors to use. To do this, they created the dedicated resources subgroup, which developed a rubric for evaluating the resources out there, and designing the project overall. This is where I joined the project. Starting in fall of 2020, I surveyed over 400 resources against the rubric that had been developed, and cataloged a little over 200 of them. We focused on building a site that is accessible to processors. A lot of processors have low technology literacy, which means that they aren't great necessarily at navigating very technical websites. A lot of them have stated they have trouble with the FDA's website because it is hard to navigate. And so instead, we wanted to give them multiple pathways to information and offer a guided, curated experience. You can see on the slide, I have a little snapshot of the homepage to the website. So what we've done is create the roadmap to resources, which is a curated guide to walk users through the site. Templates, examples, and forms gives them things like a sample label for allergens, examples of food safety plans, things that are very concrete that they can refer to. And then Connect to a Professional is a directory of food safety communicators so that they can identify a person who can offer them support and information. By giving them multiple pathways, we wanted something that no matter your level of understanding of the topic or what seems intuitive to you for information seeking, you would be able to use this resource and gain new knowledge from it. We worked with the developer to create the site, and we've uploaded these resources, the 200 that have been cataloged, but it's an ongoing project and there's always new information being added to the site. So right now, the website is in its first draft. It still needs some polishing to go. What we've done is develop a user experience survey and given it to small and very small food processors to see how they navigate the site, what they like about it, if the layout makes sense, and things like that. We're collecting that feedback right now and hope to be done with it by the end of the month. From there, we'll be doing a peer review evaluation of the site. We are developing a survey to have food safety communicators look at the website and tell us if the resources are up to date, comprehensive, to find any gaps or things that they think processors would really benefit from. We're going to take all of this data and do another round of revision. And after that, we're hoping to launch the site in late spring of this year. The launch is going to be a big effort, so check your emails. We'll be doing social media rollouts. We've developed a postcard to promote the site, and just doing as much as possible to sort of raise awareness of the project. So that'll be forthcoming. Thank you. And I'll hand things off to Elizabeth to talk more about the meeting.
Thank you, Annie. I will now just take a few minutes to lay the framework for what we have in store for our virtual annual meeting today and tomorrow. We have a very full agenda both today and tomorrow. Immediately following this, we will take a break for 10 minutes and then we'll roll into our concurrent work group meetings at 10:10. And this is where we have a preventive controls work group meeting and a produce safety work group meeting. Both meetings have very full working agendas with a lot of content and information to be shared. So we hope that you are able to join us for those full sessions. After that, we will have a virtual poster session at 11:30. And I hope that you'll join the poster presenters at their posters. These are hosted on the conference website. So if you just go back out of the Zoom room after your work group meeting has concluded and go to the conference site and select posters. You can join the table where the poster presenter will be sitting, and you can talk more about their work. We will have lunch from noon until 1. And at 1, again, we'll come back to those Zoom rooms where we'll have those concurrent work group meetings. And again, we'll have 2 hours of detailed working facilitated meetings where we will discuss regional issues specific to our processors and producers. And at 3 o'clock, we will have a networking space on the agenda. And this is hosted outside of this conference platform. We are using Wonder, but if you go to the networking tab on the conference platform, you will see a link that will take you out to that networking place, Wander. It's a very easy to use. There is a 90-second video there if you would like to watch it, just to give yourself a little bit of understanding of how to use it. We will also have guides at the networking space to help you move around in case you have any questions. But please, this is an opportunity to connect with others from across the region. As many of you will remember from our in-person meetings, networking is a very important time on our agenda. It's really built into our time together to give opportunity for meeting new people, catching up, connecting on projects, discussing potential projects moving forward. And so while we're not together, we do hope that these times in our agenda are used so that you can take time to connect and reconnect with our colleagues from across the region. Okay, for tomorrow, again, we start with networking in the morning. We'll be all together for federal updates where we'll hear from FDA and USDA. Again, we'll have a break leading into our concurrent work group meetings at 10:30. We'll have lunch, and then we all come back together at 1:30 for report out and closing remarks. And this is just to put an exclamation point on the end of the conference. Take time to reflect on what we've discussed and what we've learned and next steps moving forward as we move into the next 12 months before our next annual meeting. So what are the expectations for the meeting? As you've gleaned from hearing our presentation today, our annual meeting is really a working meeting. We want to move our objectives forward coming out of this meeting. This is our opportunity to come together and connect with partners, meet new collaborators and peers, discuss issues that your constituents are facing, ask questions of others, learn from them, share resources and experiences, learn about a new resource that you didn't know, share your resource with someone else who might be thinking about creating something similar. Please engage in the discussion. This discussion is only as good as what you put into it. Everybody's perspective is unique, it's important, and it matters. And so we really hope you take that time to contribute to the discussion. The workgroup approach that we've set up is intended to provide time together to move topics along through dialogue. We really are action-oriented, and we've facilitated questions and breakout group discussion that will help to drive this work forward so that this is not a static meeting. It's meant to promote co-discovery, hatch new plans and projects so that next year when we come back together, that list of activities that we presented on earlier continues to grow longer and becomes more comprehensive. So we thank you very much for joining us. We're very excited for this upcoming annual meeting. We're sorry we're not in person, but we know that it will be just as productive, energizing, and exciting as it would be if we were in person. So thank you so much.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, knitting's a clear winner in terms of the fidget contest, at least so far. We can keep this going for the next 2 days, so feel free to let everybody know what you're up to besides being totally engaged in the NECAF's annual meeting in the chat box. So nice to know there are people out there literally knitting. NECAF's, often we refer to the work we do as figurative knitting and bringing different threads together. And one of the people who really helped us do that the most, even from the early days of NECAF's, was Deanna Baldwin, the Maryland Department of Ag. Deanna passed away this past year. Deanna was really one of the first people when we were doing the initial work to lay the foundation for NECAF's, and even in the early proposal days, Deanna was one of the first people to reach back out to me and say, count me in. Yes, this is great. This could be real. This really could be something special. What can we do together, and what can this look like? So really, I'm really personally very grateful to have known Deanna and to have had a chance to work with her through the work of NECAFS. We asked two Maryland colleagues of Deanna to share some collected thoughts and reflections about her and her work in this area. Chris Walsh from University of Maryland and Molly Gillingham from Maryland Department of Ag. So Matt, if you wouldn't mind, let's hear from them now.
Well, Chris and Elizabeth, I want to thank you for inviting me to say a few things about my friend Deanna Baldwin at this meeting this year. Deanna really enjoyed the NECAFS meetings. She was a good participant, and she was also the linchpin of the food safety programs in Maryland. So it's really nice of you to do this, and she'd be there if she could be. With her farm background, easygoing nature, ability to juggle, and 7-day-a-week work ethic, Deanna kept a lot of balls up in the air. Everything she touched seemed to run smoothly. She had an interesting career. My understanding is her career with the Maryland Department of Agriculture began actually on the University of Maryland campus in College Park, where she was working in the basement of what's the old agronomy building. That was a Maryland Department of Agriculture job, and at that point, we still had not separated the regulatory and educational components. And then shortly after that, MDA built a new building in Annapolis, and Deanna's position was moved there and consolidated, where she spent about 40 years afterwards in that headquarters building. From that initial secretarial position, Deanna studied a lot, and she eventually became credentialed. She took advantage of her farm background, or mixed-use farm background, credentialed in a series of regulatory positions. First of all, the one that she's probably best known nationally for was as an egg inspector. And then from there, she worked with chickens. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? I guess in her case, the answer was the egg. And then after that, agronomic crops that went to feed the chickens so they could lay the eggs. So that was perhaps someone that I didn't really know for the first 20 years of our careers. But in about the year 2000, I was PI on an organic orchard project. And by then, Deanna had branched out to also be the auditor for organic crops. And I found her to be a sensible auditor. She looked closely at the paperwork. She talked to the farm manager and the growers, and then, would find some things that she had to ding us for, but nothing cataclysmic. And she always ended the audit with a smile. She never went overboard. And I think that was a really wonderful thing that stood her in good stead as she moved into produce safety audits. Her career changed and expanded even more so with the E. coli spinach outbreak of the early 2000s in California. Deanna and the Maryland Department of Agriculture recognized that not only affected California spinach, but it also affected spinach that was grown in Maryland. And the upshot of that was most growers wound up just, instead of growing fresh spinach for the fall crop, wound up sending it to a freezer, which for them was a major financial loss. It affected also market access for Maryland farmers. And that's how Deanna got into GAPS auditing with USDA AMS. That outbreak made food safety a concern for Eastern buyers and for farmers. And to avoid that barrier to market entry, Deanna worked to create a GAPS program that worked for Maryland farmers. And she was particularly interested in starting out with a stepping stone. And our stepping stone was something that she and Donna Paul and I created, which was NDA GAPS. It operates a little bit differently than GAPS in other states, but it really is a stepping stone to getting up to USDA, and then some people move on to GFSI type of information or HGAPS. But we work together to separate regulatory from educational. And we started out with MDA GAPS and then USDA GAPS training, and then in time, working with the Produce Safety Rule and Produce Safety Alliance, and then finally on-farm readiness reviews. And throughout all of this, she really worked hard to avoid the problem of regulators making suggestions as to how people should solve their problems, wanting a wider group of people. And so for that and her farm background, she involved folks who worked at the University of Maryland in Extension, both in field offices as well as the team that's worked with me as essentially GAPS educators. I think that division of responsibility between regulatory and educational was deep-seated in her farm background. Having grown up on a mixed-use produce and egg farm, she knew the value of her local extension offices and the people who run statewide programs. And she wanted to make sure the same thing happened for Maryland farmers. This cooperation, and I think without Deanna, this never would have happened. The cooperation between Maryland Department of Agriculture and the university has nurtured a cohort of excellent food safety educators. This began when we hired Donna Paul while she was still in grad school. She eventually moved to California as the lead trainer and Southwestern educator for Produce Safety Alliance. And now, lovely, thankfully, has returned to Maryland. So welcome back, Donna, as the lead trainer and coordinator for produce safety programs in the Northeastern region. After Donna Paul, Justine worked for a few years. Justine Ballou, you may remember her. She really wanted to be an extension, but found out that she really wanted to be an extension as a vegetable crop plant pathologist. So she's finishing up a doctorate now at UC Davis. Once Justine left and Dave Martin, who was a part-time retiree educator, left, we were able to hire Angela Ferrelli Gruber now. Congratulations, Angela, and Carol Allen. And they both worked for the last about 3 years. So they've had to take the brunt of shifting the program from paper and pencil to electronic. And they've done things as various as doing Zoom trainings for GAP certification, 2-day Zoom trainings, to creating videos, movies, websites, all the electronic media things that we need to be able to launch a program. So while doing this, I also want to bring some of their comments into this presentation. So I asked some of those educators, to give me a little anecdote about Deanna. And the word mentoring comes up every time you talk about her. And one of them said, Deanna's mentoring and friendship, and I'm going to read this because it's handwritten. Deanna's mentoring and friendship shaped me to be the extension educator that I am today. I fondly remember our lunches, trying to figure out how to get some recalcitrant grower into embracing GAPS principles. Despite the inspections, she was loved by Maryland growers for her compassion, sarcasm, and efforts to get growers the support they needed. It wasn't just educational support. In many cases, it was financial support to upgrade their facilities. Another extension educator said, and this is a quote, she always thought of Deanna as her work mom and a role model, looking out for her, taking her under her wing, and being a mentor in every sense of the word. I think this is all high praise indeed. And I'm just letting the people who benefited the most from knowing and working with Deanna, letting their words stand for you. Thank you again for this chance to talk about my longtime friend and colleague in the Maryland Department of Agriculture, Deanna Baldwin. She will sorely be missed. Thank you.
This past June, we unexpectedly lost one of our own, Deanna Baldwin. Deanna spent 39 years working at the Maryland Department of Agriculture. During her time at MDA, she accomplished so much. Some of her notable achievements include the creation and implementation of the Maryland GAPS program, produce safety, and the Maryland Egg Law. Deanna was devoted to agriculture and her job and was known for working 7 days a week. Deanna took pride in helping farmers in Maryland. She especially loved her small farmers, and they all loved her back. She was relatable due to her farming background and made every farmer her priority. She went out of her way to make sure that they had the resources they needed and was always a phone call away to answer their questions, no matter the time or day. Some of Deanna's colleagues in Maryland wanted to share their thoughts. Deanna had the ability to enter a room of farmers who were cranky, resistant, and sometimes angry about regulatory compliance and change the tone. She didn't do it by threatening consequences for noncompliance or by giving some canned remarks. She did it by sitting in the back of the room by the cold coffee and stale donuts and talking to them about their farms. She shared with them about her farming background. Farmers listened to her because she listened to them, and I will never forget that powerful lesson. Deanna had Maryland agriculture running through her veins. She was dedicated to helping farmers succeed, and she also dedicated to mentoring the next generation. To those at MDA, Deanna was a mother figure. She always looked out for all of her employees and wanted the food quality assurance program to excel. She did so until the very end. She continued to work while sick and in the hospital, and if she couldn't work, she had her daughter Allie sending emails and making phone calls on her behalf. Deanna's determination and commitment was admirable. A former inspector at MDA had this to say about Deanna. I think part of what made Deanna Baldwin so special in her work was her clear passion to advocate and help preserve both a sensible and realistic balance between food production and food safety. The stakeholders knew that they could reach someone relatable and at any time. The solution may or may not have been what the stakeholders was hoping and reaching for sometimes, but the interaction was positive, respectful, and more than likely not interjected with humor. Outside of work, Deanna treated each of us with the same care and compassion as she would her own family, and she will be missed. Deanna was an encyclopedia of agricultural knowledge and always had an answer to any question. She taught us all something new every day. She was an asset to the Northeast region. Many state partners looked up to Deanna. One colleague had this to say about her. Deanna's knowledge and experience were a valuable asset to the Northeast group and national produce safety efforts. What I appreciate most was her ability to tell it like it is with a sharp wit that left no doubt what her feelings were. Deanna will be missed as a colleague and a friend. I think we can all agree Deanna was one of a kind. Her leadership and commitment to food safety will be missed by all.
Sharing their memories about Deanna, and also to those who offered reflections in the chat. I appreciate seeing everybody else's memories of Deanna as well. It's all too easy for us to get lost in the shuffle of this work. And each of us really brings something special to these conversations. Our hope with the Kneecast annual meeting is to provide an annual milestone where we all connect and get back together and sort of pause and zoom out a little bit and share in these conversations that are really meaningful in the work we do, but also share our relationships, which are meaningful with each other. Let's enjoy our time together. Let's work hard and share openly and honestly around the topics that are important to us and to our work. And let's really enjoy our ability to work together on toward common goals and use Deanna as a role model in this year's work and going forward. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Elizabeth to get us oriented towards the work of the day.
Thank you, Chris. So I would just like to let everybody know we are about 15 minutes ahead of schedule, which is great. And we are heading into a break before going to our concurrent work group meetings. And just to orient everybody, this is the only session this morning that will be in this video player. All of the rest of the day's work will be in Zoom rooms. And you can get to the Zoom rooms by either going back to the conference portal and clicking on the link that's listed underneath the session title, or when I finish speaking, there will be a slide with the link embedded that you can click on, which will take you directly to the Zoom room for either the produce safety or the preventive controls work group meeting. The other thing that I wanted to just mention is after this morning's work group meetings, we will have a virtual live poster session, and that is hosted inside the conference portal. And if you go to the poster session at on the tab at the top, you can find the individual posters and click on the table to join and talk to the poster presenter. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that, and there is time carved in the agenda for that. So with that, we'll have a little bit of a longer break this morning before we start with the work group meetings. The work group meetings will start at 10:10. And so I will now thank everybody for this morning and see you all in 25 minutes. Thank you.